All right, welcome back to the Ottawa studios of Inside My Canoe Head, and welcome to Season 11 of this podcast, episode 273. We appreciate you being here. So we are going to start off Season 11 with a little bit of an intro, and then we're going to get into economic preparedness, situational analysis, talking about your preparedness beyond the initial 20%. So grab your favorite beverage. Let's get at her. Everybody loves starting their day off with a cool beat, a great sound, and a wonderful background. Thanks again for joining us. I am your host, Dr. D. We appreciate every time you come and join us on this podcast. If you're brand new, welcome. We talk about things preparedness, but we talk about it in a frame of reality, non-apocalyptic, rational thinking. So if you think the world's going to collapse and you are ready for societal collapse and you think we're all going to be running around in the woods, well, sit around and think. You might just learn something new. But if you're interested in preparedness, if you think you would really like to take a better handle of the chaos that the world is, if you would like to better insulate you and your family from shocks that are beyond your control, people do dumb things that affect you, and you want less of that to happen, and you want to take greater command and control of your outcomes and what's going to happen to your family, then sit back, as I say, grab your favorite beverage. This is a place for you. We got a website, www.insidemycanoehead.ca. Drop over there. All the past episodes, things about the website, things about our parent company, everything is there. So let's get after it. Listen, we know that preparedness is initially covering you. It's about your family and your community through creating an individual preparedness strategy and what we refer to here as your trifecta of preparedness plans. So we first understand that preparedness begins with you looking that incredible person in the mirror and accepting personal responsibility for your outcomes, right? I don't care why you got where you are now. I couldn't give two poops why you are the way you are and live where you do and work in the function you do and have the debt you do and have everything else that's around you. You have to look at that person in the mirror and say, I accept responsibility for my outcomes. Everything that happens from this point forward is my fault. Whether I'm successful or whether I fail, it's my fault. You have to adopt that mentality. If you're going to adopt a victim mentality, that you can't do things because of other people, that you're oppressed, that you're held back, that you're a victim of some type of, grand strategy that's working against you, there's not much any of us can do to help you adopt a prepared life, right? First thing is personal responsibility. I'm responsible for my outcomes. And then it comes with you. We look at you, that incredible person staring back at you in that mirror and say, hey, listen, you are really no good to anybody else unless your physical, financial, and your mental health is sorted. And when I mean sorted, I mean you've figured it out. You've accepted the case. You're on the road to recovery. You're on the road to a solution. This doesn't mean you get up tomorrow and start running around the block in circles and give up all stress and anxiety. We know the real world doesn't work like that, but you can't really adopt a prepared life. You can't be prepared for disasters and other calamities that happen in your life if you're out of shape, broke, and incredibly stressed. That is not the place to start a calamitous event. The world goes pear-shaped, the shizzy hits the fizzy, and you have 20 cents in your bank, you're 250 pounds overweight, and you are stressed to the nine so bad that you have difficulty going to work. You are not going to be good to your family. You're not going to be good to yourself. Blunt, unapologetically so, in your face. This is exactly what we do here at Inside My Canoe Head. That's what you have to do. So then we move from there and we build a strategy. We help you build a strategy for building a preparedness plan for your family, however you define that, multi-generational, multi-location, culturally specific. There's all kinds of things. If you drop over to our website at www.insidemycanoehead.ca, there's a link there to the parent website. Preparedness Labs Incorporated. When you go over there, halfway, 3/4 of the way down the page, there is going to be a newsletter to sign up for, free of charge. But if you don't want to leave me your email, there's a free family preparedness handout there, right? I won't know you're there. There's no special trackers attached to you. I don't do any of that crap. You just go there and you free download. It's a 3-pager I created. It gives you that starting point and how to start off. Everything that we provide in our paid format. There's paid options there, but right now everything we provide to you is free of charge, right? That's just what we do here at Inside My Canoe Head. It's our community service to everybody within the neighborhood, right? We are trying to help people out, adopt a prepared life, assume responsibility for their outcomes, and figure out how to navigate this crazy and incredibly odd 2020 decade that we find ourselves in. So it's all there, free of charge. Go have a look at it. But it basically means that you are capable of taking care of your family, however you define that, for a reasonable period of time when you lose access to sectors of critical infrastructure, right? It's all the stuff, all the details are there, how to do it. Plus, in the 272 earlier episodes of this podcast, over the last 4+ years, we've covered everything in minute detail. It's all listed there on our Buzzsprout site, or on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or right there on Inside My Canoe Head. All of the previous episodes are there. You'll find the topic you're looking for. There are books, video courses, and everything else available to you. But from a free perspective, it's all there. Why do we want to talk about economic pressures? Why do we want to talk about the economic world? Well, let's be realistic. Your economic world is composed of your income, your savings, your retirement, your emergency funds, and your disability insurance. If we think about those 5 things, they're very, very important. Now, you may live in a family where you are the single income breadwinner. You are the one providing the vast majority of income that keeps a family going. You may be in a family where there's 3 or 4 contributing members. All of them have a significant part to play, and you work really well together. See, everybody's going to look a little bit different, right? But the basic rule of money is simple. You spend less than you earn, and you'll never need savings. It's really not more complicated than that. If you make $10,000 a month take home and you spend less than $10,000, you'll never need to dip into your savings. Now, if that's I make $2,000 a month and I never spend $2,000 a month, you'll never need savings because you'll never run out of money. The thing is, the initial rule in preparedness strategy and to fight economic pressure is that you must run out of month before you run out of money. Initially, handling through cutting. And this is the tough choice that people have. When we sort your financial future out, and we always recommend you sit there and say, okay, I make $5,000 a month and I spend $6,000 a month. Well, this month you're going to have to spend less than $5,000, and you just got to cut. You just got to cut. There's no other unapologetic way to do it, right? What you're doing is setting yourself up to be able to deal with the economic pressures. If you simply spend more than you earn, you cannot deal with economic pressures that are beyond your control. It is 100% within your control to spend less than you earn, right? Very simple. That's it, right? You can do that today. You don't need anybody's special help. You can make a list of all the things money come in and a list of all the things you spend, and you cut it until you have money left over at the end of the month. It's really that simple. The second rule of basic money management is that you're responsible for your retirement, right? It's not somebody else's job to pay your bills when you retire. Again, we go back to the uncomfortable truth of personal responsibility on which adopting a prepared life is based, right? You have to fund your retirement. Now, I live in Canada, and we have a good Canada pension plan. There's Social Security in the United States. There are other countries that have wonderful plans. That's part of your retirement planning. The idea here in Canada is that Canada Pension Plan is designed to pay 1/3 of your costs, right? So if you are relying on Canada Pension Plan alone for retirement, then you are drastically cutting your quality of life, and you're going to be a tea and toast person or couple in your retirement. Is going to be a pretty tough struggle. So the other 2/3 is your responsibility. And as Warren Buffett and Dave Ramsey famously say, the power of compound interest, you got to start early and be consistent, and it's really not much more complicated than that. And the third rule is that you're responsible to have an emergency fund. And this is the majority of the rest we're going to talk about today, is about those economic pressures that are beyond your control, right? Things that happen to you, things that happen around you, things that have nothing, you had no involvement in the creation of this incident. You had no involvement in the effect of the incident, but it altered your economic world. And because it altered your economic world, it is your responsibility to have an emergency fund of some type. And that's really your world to put together, right? So we're going to talk a lot about that today. We're going to talk about what we need to do. And really, when we talk about economic preparedness, we means that your world, how you intend to conduct your life and chase your dreams is insulated from economic shock. Be that personal economic shock, which is a loss of income, taxation or programmatic decisions by politicians that reduce your income or your ability to allocate your discretionary spending to what it is that you would like to do, or regulatory changes in your industry that influence business expansion or outright cause your business operations to cease. And a prime example of that is when we talk about the pandemic. And now, no matter what you think of the government's actions and the ideological frame of how the pandemic was handled, there were decisions made by politicians that influenced your ability to earn an income. Great people doing wonderful work for healthy companies lost their job because of restrictions that were imposed by government. Now, again, I don't care whether you think they were good, bad, or indifferent. That's not the point. The point is, this is a prime example of how an external agency can step into your world and by no action of your own cause your income to change, right? Economic preparedness is, I know what I intend to do when that happens. I know what I'm planning to do when something external to me in my world steps into my world and causes a significant disruption, right? Another one is high inflation rates. We see the high inflation up. At times they were up to 7-8% inflation at a certain point of the post-pandemic spending burp. Prices are not within your control, my friend. You don't set the prices at the grocery store. You can get as angry as you want, but that doesn't change the price in the grocery store, right? That's just a waste of your energy to be upset about government decisions and how it's contributing to high inflation, etc. How do you adjust? Right? If you can't adjust your income on the spot, but your expenses go up, how do you intend to adjust? We have high interest rates that affect your loan payments, whether that be a line of credit, whether that be a credit card, whether that be a car note or a car loan, whether it be a mortgage. It's starting to cause you to spend more money than you additionally did. If you're an entrepreneur like myself, it affects your access to capital, right? It costs a lot more to borrow capital. So if I wanted to borrow $50,000 to start a business initiative, it's now going to cost me more money to borrow that $50,000. The high interest rate makes access to capital less advantageous. However, the bonus side of it is, and you can't forget this, if you have reasonably healthy investment portfolios, higher interest rates can benefit you as well. So what we're trying to say here is when you think about your family in comparison to your neighbors and everybody you know, how your family's constructed, how you conduct your lives, the hopes and the dreams that you're chasing all make you exposed to different sets of economic events and to different degrees of effective and economic descents. So when we think about preparedness, we think beyond the initial 20% strategy, right? Which I spoke about before, which is the idea of having a preparedness plan, getting ready to shelter in place if necessary, provide the animalistic requirements of food, water, shelter, health, safety, and security to you and those for whom you're responsible, to have an evacuation plan, a power outage plan, and a fired plan, right? So when you have that trifecta of preparedness plans, you've basically hit the 20%. We here want to talk about, and this is what season 10 is going to be all about, what does that other 80% look like? What does adopting a prepared life mean if I want to consider strategic ideas beyond, right? Your pivot plan. What is your pivot plan when significant events happen? We talk about this in your trifecta of preparedness plan, the last preparedness plan we ask you to have a look at before you're done the initial 20%. And that is simply, what do you plan to pivot to when your job is no longer available? And you might say, hey, that's not a problem. I'll just get another job in the same industry. Okay, great. How are you going to do that? With what company? What's their current hiring strategy? Does that mean a change in income? Like, there's a thought process you need to go through. And the key that we keep saying is none of this costs you any money, right? None of this thinking about preparedness beyond that initial 20% costs you any money. Developing a strategy for how you intend to react when your income is lost doesn't cost you any money. Everybody gets fired. Everybody loses their job, right? At some point in life, you will leave the job you're doing now. You'll die, you'll retire, you'll get fired, or you'll quit, right? You'll leave it. So you might as well be ready to leave on the terms you want. What if that there was an emergency event that happened in your town? You're fine, your family's fine, but your place of work burned down. Say you were a Class A mechanic at a garage. The garage burned down. What does your boss plan to do? Does your boss have money set aside where they intend to continue paying the employees for a period of 2 months while they rebuild, right? Have you asked that question? Maybe the answer is, dude, if this place burns down, I'll pay you to the work done, and then you're on your own, and we wish you the best of luck, and we'll call you in a year when we rebuild to see if you're interested in coming back, right? You don't know the answer to that question until you ask it. What if your job simply goes away? And this is why we look at it from the perspective of it's a loss of income. Why it happens, who cares, right? You come into work tomorrow, and if you work in a professional sense, and many of you do, many of our listeners are from reasonably affluent locations and areas. When you think about it, you go to work on a Monday morning, ready to tackle that PowerPoint, and you're met in the basement of the office tower by security and HR. And you're taken into a side room. There's a box there with all your personal possessions from your office. They take your ID card, they take your key card, your security card. You're already lost access to all your emails, and the severance package is put in front of you. It happens all the time. Now we see it, people getting fired by Zoom. People invited to a Zoom call with HR and told that their position is terminated effective immediately. And that's it. They're done. So what's your plan? People in the pandemic who succeeded very, very well were mostly, not always, but mostly from a contingent of people who had a pivot strategy. When I get fired, I will do this. I will go down this road. Or people who are opportunistic thinkers, right? People who started up a business and made personalized masks for a very short period of time to make a lot of capital, and then take that capital to launch something else. A lot of people, and I know a number of my listeners did, simply sat at home, asked for some government money, and waited for everything to blow over so they could get back to their regular life. A lot of people, that still is not working out for them. They're still economically lagging behind where they were before because of the pandemic. People will blame that on the pandemic. I'm here to tell you I'm blaming it on your lack of a pivot plan and your lack of a strategy to move to something different, right? It doesn't matter if you've spent 22 years as this certain, you've been an electrician for 22 years. Great. What's your plan when you can't be an electrician anymore? Oh, that doesn't happen. Okay, fine. But then don't complain when you lose your job and you have no money and no pivot plan, because I'll be standing there in the mirror going, well, you said this wouldn't happen. Right? You said this wouldn't happen. So somebody just owes you an electrician job, right? That's a victim mentality. That's something that's saying, hey, listen, it's somebody else's responsibility to step in and take care of my bills for me, right? You owe me a job as an electrician because I've been an electrician for 22 years. Nobody owes you a job, right? You're owed sweet bleep all, if you know what I mean, right? Haven't you seen that meme before? Where somebody holds you up a blank piece of paper and this is everything you're entitled to and everything the society owes you for being here. And it's a blank piece of paper, right? So it's about carving out a strategy, and strategic thinking is free, right? Through season 7, 8, and part of season 9 at Inside My Canoe, and you can go back on the website to all of these episodes, we did some deep dives into strategic thinking. Not strategic planning, that was the second part, but strategic thinking, the idea of choosing goals, orientating ideas, stacking possibilities, and how to develop thought processes that would bring you down this line. It's free of charge, right? It's absolutely free of charge. I know exactly what I'm pivoting to if my current business, Preparedness Labs Incorporated, goes under, right? If for whatever reason, and it doesn't matter why, all of a sudden that business is closed. What am I doing tomorrow? What am I getting up and doing tomorrow? I know what that is. I know how I'm going to fund it. It's not a lot of money. You don't need a lot of money to fund new ideas, but I've figured that out, and I've tuck that money away. It's taken me a couple of years to set the money aside. Nothing happens overnight. I'm not uber rich like the rest of you. I'm a working individual who earns a retirement salary for being a veteran, and that's not all that huge. But I've managed to save a little bit on the side. So I have a strategy of where I'm turning to, right? It's not that difficult. If your income was lost today, how would you earn your next check? Very basic question. Another thing we talk about in preparedness is if you had to evacuate and remain outside of your home location, right? So if you evacuated, how are you going to earn an income? Right? What's your plan? So if you have to evacuate from, say, the coast of Texas with Hurricane Beryl, and your home washed away, and your place of business washed away, what's your plan? Right? And I often talk to this because part of economic pressures and economic preparedness is understanding the insurance world. And we're going to close out with a short discussion here today on insurance. If you think you know your insurance policy, I'm going to challenge you to read it. If I was to say to you right now, if your home was lost, so whether that's a wildfire, a flood, a hurricane, a tornado, an earthquake, whatever it is, number one, are you covered for that calamity? And if you're covered for that calamity, what exactly are your responsibilities under your insurance policy? What is your expected set of actions that the insurance company requires you to do in order to support your coverage? If the insurance coverage includes payment for rent and a secondary residence while you're waiting for your initial residence to be repaired, how much do they pay? Is that sufficient amount to cover the rent in your local area, right? Because for most policies, you still have to pay your mortgage while your home is being rebuilt, right? So for the 2 years it takes your home to be rebuilt, you're still paying your monthly mortgage. So the insurance companies, the idea of the insurance is they'll pay for the rent on your second home while you're waiting for your first home to be repaired. But what if their rates don't cover this jacked up high inflation rents and housing pressure that we're having right now, and the insurance company doesn't cover it? What if they pay $2,000 a month and your rent is actually $2,800? Now you've added $800 a month expenses to your family budget because of a loss that was beyond your control. Right? Now, is that the truth? Do you know that's the truth? What exactly do they cover? How long do they cover it for? What are the limitations? What if you can't find a residence within your geographical location because of a competition with all the other people who are dislodged from their normal homes? How far away are you allowed to move? Do they cover actual moving costs? Do they cover the acquisition and purchase of new furniture, or do they simply cover furniture rental costs? What we're suggesting here is the time to answer all of these questions is not after you've had a loss. The time to answer these questions is before. Are you aware? And then I'll extend it to the other part of insurance that's very necessary in an economic sense, is your disability insurance. Now, whether you have that as a rider through work, whether you have a reasonably well-funded public sector disability, short-term or long-term disability plan, understanding what you're paid. Most private sector disability plans pay 75% of your salary in time of long-term injury. Say you get injured on the job and you lose your income because you got injured in the workplace, but you're covered by long-term disability. Think about today. Think about how close to the line so many people live. People live paycheck to paycheck. If you got hurt at work and I cut your salary by 25%, there's a good portion of the population out there that are no longer going to be able to pay their regular bills because their income went down by a quarter. And if they're on disability, they likely can't go out and get a second job to replace that. Now, what do you do? So when we look at all these possible contingencies, you think about maybe it's too difficult. Look at all the possible things that could go wrong. Look at all the things that could issue or impact or all these exogenous. It's too much. What often happens when you look at it from that type of perspective, a lot of people simply become apathetic. They don't care. They just say, it's not going to happen to me. I'm going to use avoidance behavior. I don't care about it. will roll with it, or I have a certain risk tolerance, personal self-efficacy that I'm confident no matter what happens to me, I can navigate it, right? Shoot from the hip type of people. We all know them. Some of them are very good friends, right? Or even family members. The point is, we're suggesting that if you take some time and some effort, but no money, and you examine the economic pressures that may impact how you and your family intend to live your life to chase your dreams, and then you look at what you might consider doing in the event that happens, you are going to be far further ahead than most of people listening to this podcast or most of your residents around. Think about it. When the shizzy hits the fizzy and the world goes pear-shaped, people are going to be running around trying to figure out what's going on. You're going to be executing a well-understood plan. Your family is going to be executing their jobs, top to bottom, left to right, getting things in order and charging forward when everybody else is still watching CNN or BBC trying to figure out what just happened to the world, right? That's the difference between preparedness planning and people who shoot from the hip, right? You're not necessarily any smarter than anybody else, but you've invested the time and effort and say, hey, listen, when the main income for our family is lost, this is what we think we're going to do. That puts you ahead of the plan. This is what we think we'll pivot to. This is how long it thinks it'll take us to pivot to that. We think we need about $4,200 in expenses. Now we've got a strategy to put that together. Now, in today's volatile world and today's high interest rates or today's high inflation rates, putting up that $4,000 emergency fund might take you like a year and a half, but you have a plan, you have a target, and you're on track to do it, right? And in a year and a half, you're going to have that $4,000 tucked away in a high interest savings account, benefiting from high interest rates, earning you a little bit of money. So when you're punched in the gut by a world that is beyond your control, you can just take a knee for a second, adjust, and swing over to what you plan to do next, and you carry on. Understanding the economic pressures around you is about understanding that these things can influence your lives through no fault of your own and through no action of your own. The fault is yours if you fail to have an idea or a strategy as to what you intend to do when these things happen. When your income is lost, when politicians make crazy decisions that impact, and we'll just return to this last example for the pandemic. Say you were a restaurant owner, right? You were a restaurant owner, or you were a restaurant server, or you were a restaurant cook, and the pandemic hit and the government comes in for whatever rationale they intend to use. They closed or restricted access to restaurants. Your income started going down the tank. Would you sit around and wait for it to magically fix itself? Would you expect somebody else to fund your problem that you were having and to give you free government money? Or would you want to have a strategy in place that said, hey, listen, I can navigate this for about a couple of weeks, but at a certain, after about 2 weeks, I'm going to make an assessment that this isn't coming back anytime soon. So I'm going to pivot. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to launch strategy B. We're going to start this. I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to learn this skill set, which is going to take me 3 months. It'll then take me 2 months to get hired in this industry. So in total, I need 5 months of basic living expenses set aside. Now you know how big your emergency fund is. That's the idea of economic preparedness, economic strategic thinking, and presenting and positioning you and your family to be able to navigate this crazy decade called the 2020s, which is only going to continue to get worse. Next episode, we're going to talk about political ideas and political preparedness, things that can influence how you rock your life and what you intend to do that are beyond your control. Just look at my American friends that are 48% of the downloads for this podcast. You've got a big event coming up on November 5th that affects all the rest of us in the world. Let's talk about it. So sit back, have yourself an awesome week, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care. Stay safe.